Alright guys, so we are continuing our look here at blue-black control decks in Pauper. Now if you kind of don't understand my recent obsession with these and why I've posted up so many videos on different versions of blue-black control decks for the Pauper format, then go to puremtgo.com, check out my article there. If you do not see it, then well, you are realizing the fact that these videos come out before the article. So just stay tuned, it should be up shortly. I'm putting the finishing touches on it right now. But anyways, plug aside, so we're all familiar with the Izzet Control deck that uses the Locust Lands, the Cloud Posts, and the Glimmer Posts to ramp up mana, play a lot of big spells, you get the Condescends, Mystical Teachings, and the big finisher there is Rolling Thunders. Now I love this deck, it is a great deck, but it just is not quite my format. I've not been getting a lot of good games with it, so I do not play it regularly. But this has kind of offered me a good alternative. Now, I've taken that, and the point of this article, I've been trying to put a blue-black control deck together that would be formidable for competitive play in Pauper. Now, going through the list, I wanted to build one into the shell using the ramped mana on the Locust Lands, and kind of keep with some of the same spells, the Capsize, the Condescend, the Teachings, because these big mana spells just fit so perfectly. Then you'll see some of the other decks I've come across if you catch my other videos, but I really wanted to focus in on this one. And during my research, I was trying out a couple things, and I kept running into an issue. Now, the issue is with the Izzet Control deck really focuses on Rolling Thunder as its finisher. It does run a Crusher in most decks, up to 2. Some decks actually don't even have it, so the focus really is to get in the Rolling Thunder as kind of the finisher damage, or to just, ping you down with the Mulldrifters. So my problem was that I was not able to kind of mimic the Rolling Thunder. Without the Rolling Thunder, I was having trouble getting the creature base to work out. And I came across this deck here, and it kind of just blew my mind, because I had one of those dumb moments where I realized how stupid it was that I kept trying to work my way around Rolling Thunder, whereas this person just worked in Rolling Thunder. So instead of my trying to find an answer to replacing it, the whole time I should have just kept it in the deck. Now this is made possible. You still use the prisms. I played with using them and not using them in my versions, but this deck, it uses the prisms. It brings in also 3 Shimmering Grottos to allow you to siphon out into the red mana without actually running mountains. You could run a mountain because it does run a Terramorphic, and I am a little unsure as to the single Terramorphic, but that's totally up to you. I wanted to show you guys this deck as is, how I came across it. I would personally make some changes, but, again, I wanted to show you how this comes across just as is. So let's take a look here at what he's got going on. Now, he's really done a great job here of combining some of the big mana spells that you love in the Izzet Control deck. You have 3 of the Condescends, you do have the Capsize, you're running a full selection of Mulldrifters for the draw abilities. Excuse me. Now, you're also bringing in the Wall. The Wall allows you to bounce things back to your hand, and you do have a large option. Teachings is another thing that is run in most versions of the Izzet Control. It's a really great addition because the flashback cost is with black in the mana, so you have the option to, in this deck, do that easily without having to siphon it into a prism. You also are able to, get the probes in here, and this is one of my favorite cards. One of the reasons I really love the blue-black kind of control version. Probe is kind of a heavy-costed thing to play it with the kicker, and you really want to play with the kicker. It is going to cost you to discard, draw 3, discard 2, but you really want to be able to get that kicker in to force your opponent to discard as well. Discarding 2 on your own is not such a big deal, you get your choices, but forcing your opponent to discard 2 as well is really a fantastic thing. So let's look at some of the options he's brought in here as kind of search options for the Teachings. I mean, this is a really good combination of the Teachings deck and the the kind of where I was going with the Rolling Thunder and the Izzet Control. You look at the Teachings deck, so you check out my other videos. You do want to bring in a whole bunch of options that the Teachings can search for. You do have counterspells. You have 2 regular counterspells. You have the Mana Leak, and then you have the Condescends. These are all great, and you also bring in quite a package from black as far as creature kill goes. Now that brings you 3 Innocent Blood. It also brings you, in this version, 3 Doomblades and 2 Echoing Decays. So you're under this thing with Echoing Bloods, where I like to point this out. Just you want to use that at an opportunity where it's not going to hurt you so much. You can cast that and you don't have a creature on the field and your opponent is just sacrificing. Now this gets even better because you can use this when your opponent has only a single creature on the field and it becomes a targeted kill for 1 black mana, so that's pretty fantastic. Now there are some odd choices in here that I probably would not have. Grim Harvest, I'm unsure about this. It has not come to use in any games in all the testing I've done with this, but I can see a need for it. One of the downsides of the Izzet Control matchup is the fact that it really relies on Rolling Thunder to pull in the win. So if Rolling Thunder is gone for whatever reason or countered, then your only real creature damage is the Mulldrifters, and you're really hoping for them to go through and do damage. Now, by bringing in Grim Harvest, you have some options. You can evoke a Mulldrifter and get it back for the same cost, and that would gain you an extra 2 cards drawn. You can use the evoke on the Mulldrifter to bounce the Grim Harvest as well, which is fantastic. And then you can also get back the Crusher. As soon as the Crusher comes about, they will want to kill that as soon as possible, and if you can get that back, that's fantastic. It kind of provides you with an out for the Rolling Thunder being gone. But like I said, I have not personally had it come into any kind of benefit for me. So I can't really give you a judgment call. I can understand the purpose in there, but I'm not totally sure why it's there. Now the other thing is kind of an odd choice is the single Duress. I really honestly think this is a wasted card slot. I can see Duress in the sideboard and being able to bring it in, but having a single one here, and it's not even a card that is tutorable through the mystical teachings, so it really seems like a kind of a wasted card. I feel like you could combine that and some of these singles maybe into something better. Something maybe like moving this Mana Leak into a 3rd counterspell. I see the purpose of Mana Leak. The casting cost has a colorless in it, so you can get around some of the facts that you're kind of sitting on a small color base, so to say. Most of your lands are going to produce colorless, so I can understand the point of that, but just little things like that. I'm a player who prefers to have multiples instead of a whole bunch of singles. Another interesting choice is the single Brainstorm. Now the single Brainstorm, it is fetchable with teachings, so I guess that's kind of nice, but I feel like there are better things that I would want to do with teachings than get a single Brainstorm. There aren't really any instant card draw spells in this deck, so there's no reason. You don't have the opportunity to fetch those with teachings, so I can see that as an opponent for an opponent. Let's try that again. I can see that as an argument for Brainstorm. It allows you to search that up and use it to kind of manipulate your deck, try and find a Cloud Post, or further try and find the Rolling Thunders. You also have in this deck 2 Agony Warps, which are nice, but I start to think that the kill package is a bit heavy. I can totally understand that there is a lot of aggro out there right now. There's the goblins, there's mono white aggro. You run into a whole bunch of control decks with not control, the infect decks with a creature base that you want to get rid of as soon as possible. So I can understand the purpose of that, but at the very least, like I said, I would probably want to, in my version, get rid of the Duress and maybe move the Mana Leak into a counterspell as well. But anyways, so let's take a quick look at the sideboard as well before we get to a couple games. You see he does have another Duress in the sideboard. Like I said, those usually are a great choice for the sideboard. You bring those in against the control matchups. But I don't necessarily see a need for one in the main deck. You get another Echoing Decay. This is a fantastic thing. You want to bring this in for any matchup against the Warren Storm, or if you find yourself playing a mono white version that is heavy on the 1/1 creatures, which you do occasionally run into. Not all mono white versions are like that, just a side note. So be aware of that, and you want to bring those in for that. So you also have Dispel, great for the control matchup, great for the if you find yourself in not necessarily the mirror, but the Izzet Control, you want to be able to bring those in to counter those instants. Hydroblast is great. You can bring that in as well for the Izzet matchup to stop Rolling Thunder. Works great against the Goblins deck as well. Negate, again, control. You see, I was talking about just a second ago the fact that the main deck is really heavy on the creature kill. That's mostly because the sideboard is very anti-control. We do have some options here. You see the Vendetta. It brings in, it's another kill spell that is available to you. It gets it in at a single cost. Personally, I'm not sure I'm totally sold on these. I might want to switch these out for something a little more helpful, like land destruction. I mean, I can understand the appeal to it. You are running in the sideboard a lot of anti-control match stuff. There is a lot of anti-aggro in the main deck, so it's really kind of a personal choice. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my words today, but it is definitely a personal choice. I'm not sure I would want to use the Vendettas. Maybe one or two, maybe switch one out for a second Echoing Decay for the sideboard, fourth for the deck, something along those lines would be more what I would do. Now he also has another interesting choice here. You have the Weatherseed Fairies, and this is not a card that I have ever seen in my time as a Pauper player. I can see the appeal. I guess it works against the any kind of burn. If you're playing against the Izzet, I guess you could bring it in, and they would not be able to use the kill spells on it. It would be able to stop goblins. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting choice to say the very least. It's a 3-cost 2/1 flyer with protection from red, so I guess I can see the appeal to it in some matchups, but until I really have had the opportunity to get it in hand, I have tried to sideboard it in against some of the red decks that I've come across, but have not, again, had the opportunity to get it in hand. Things I might consider for my sideboard are things like Choking Sand, something to stop the decks, the Fissure Storm, which relies on the Ravnica lands, or the Izzet Control, which relies on the Cloud Posts. Most Izzet Control decks will bring in some kind of land destruction spells for the mirror matchup, so just keep that in mind. As you'll see, I think in one of the games I show you here is that comes about, but that you want to get these counter spells in there so you can try and prevent that as much as possible. So yeah, there you go. I personally, like I keep saying, I would try to run this in tournaments with my own version, make some changes, but I was entirely jealous that someone kind of solved for my problem before I even got to it. He probably had this deck put together and solved my problem before I even knew the problem. So, definitely jealous, and check out my video in a few. I will have it up shortly about my version of, the options for UB Bigs, as I am calling that. But, let's take a second here and let's check out this deck in a couple games. Okay, so cut to game 1 here. And this was my opening hand, pretty good. The Double Innocent Blood is nice. I do have the Swamp in hand, so I can play that if I am against aggro, and I do have the Grotto, so I can switch into blue if I do not get one sometime soon. On the start, we'll of course throw out the Swamp so that I have that in play. You want to kind of hold Glimmer Posts until there are more clouds on the field. We see my opponent's first play is Cloud Post, so you immediately believe it is Izzet Control, or it could be the new white version of the Rebel, the heavy mana Rebel deck. So I top off with the Cloud Post, and like I said, you want to kind of hold the Glimmers until later. So I'm more than happy to put that into play. It will ramp my opponent's mana a little bit, but I want to also have that mana available as soon as possible. So when it comes down, we know he is not playing the Rebel deck, the Rebel ramp, however you want to call that deck. He is probably playing the Izzet version, but we're okay with that. It should still be a pretty decent matchup. I think you have some more answers in this than that one does. So we will play the Grotto. Now I have the ability to cast, teachings and stuff, but I have to siphon a mana off to the Grotto to change its color. So you have to keep that in mind. The Grotto isn't just a color fixer. It does cost 1 to add the color. So if you need to use it as a color fixer, you're kind of switching it off. You will have 1 less in play than you think you do. So my opponent throws out a Glimmer Post, and I'm okay with that because I still have mine in hand, so that means I will have the ability to gain even more life than he does. Always important. But you see, I did draw into another Cloud Post, so again, I'm going to put that out so that later on I can gain 1 additional life off this. Still, now you see there are 4 Locusts in play. I could tap this one, I could play Teachings. I really have no need right now. He's going to see what I have. If he has a creature, then I kind of want to save it for later on if I need a directly targeted kill spell. So my opponent has to discard. He misses a land drop there, and you see he did discard the Agony Warp, which is interesting. It is kind of a mirror matchup. I did not expect to see that. but he is playing a version of blue-black bigs, as I like to call it. So my Glimmer Post comes down. I do have heavy mana in play now, and I'm going to use the Grotto to siphon a mana off my tap 5 Cloud Post and put a Muldrifter in play. Now I assumed it was going to get countered because my opponent had so much available mana. He could have had the Condescend. But he is missing a second blue, so he would not be able to cast Counterspell at this point in time. But I did expect, you do see a lot of the Condescends, I did expect that to come down. So I was happy to get the Muldrifter, and yet, of course, another Cloud Post. So you're never going to complain to see more posts in this deck, especially you've kind of managed into your 2 colors, even if accidentally. So my opponent, Sid here, he, if you didn't see that real fast, he did cast a Capsize on one of my Cloud Posts. This is a bit of a mistake on his part, because he is casting it during his turn. Ideally, what you want to do is cast that at the end of my turn, because that leaves your mana open for counterspells and such. If you are casting it during your turn, it just tells me that you have no counterspells, you have no other choices, and you're being forced to use that to try and slow me down. So it's a mistake. You want to be able to use that, like I said, end of turn. It's going to cause more issues. If I had land on tap, you would, be able to cast Capsize to prevent me to have that land on tap. And now I know I have some options here. I can keep the mana open for Condescend. I know that he's not going to be able to keep up with my mana base here, and I can counter that. You also have the option here, if I put this Grotto into play, then I would have my second blue mana, and in response to him capsizing something, like say I Condescend against his Capsize on the next casting of it, and he responds by countering that as well. Now, I do have the option to, later on, when I have that blue mana available, use Capsize, so when he capsizes a land, I can, in response, capsize my own land, and that will have no legal target for his Capsize, thereby countering it. It's not an ideal play, but like I said, if he did manage to get a counter off on your Condescend, then, that would be your best play, is to use the Capsize at this point in time. So you see there, I had to discard, and now that I know my opponent's playing, even if this was the Izzet Control deck, you want to be able to get rid of these Innocent Bloods. The deck is a little heavy on creature kill for this matchup. Most of these post-control decks do only run a small amount of creatures. So here you see he tapped out to play the Capsize. He's going to have 2 mana available, but I'm going to have much more than that to be able to cast Condescend. Let's see, what did I get it off here for? 6. Okay, so he only has 2. He's not going to have the 6 to get this, and I am able to scry. One of my favorite parts of the Condescend is that scry ability, and you see here I reveal an island and my Crusher. This is fantastic. The island will go to the bottom, and the Crusher will go on top. My opponent is tapped out. I know that I can play that Crusher on this turn, and he will be helpless to stop it. Cloud Post's always coming down. You can make an argument for putting the second Grotto down just to make sure that you have the second mana for the Capsize, but there is no big issue. My big thing on this turn is I want to get the Crusher into play because my opponent is tapped out. Versus any control deck, you want to be able to get those bombs off, take advantage of the mistake of your opponent tapping out on his turn. That's why I said he wants to be able to use that Capsize at the end of my turn instead of during his. That would really, puts me at an advantage by him doing that on his turn. So here comes the Crusher. He has no option to stop it. If he drew a swamp, he seems to be running, a pretty similar version. I imagine there are Doomblades, and he would have answers for it. Casts the Prism to draw. You see Cloud Posts at this point in time are tapping for 6, and he decides to scoop. It's really tough. He's sitting across from the Crusher. I'm guessing he did not draw into a land, which is what he was hoping for off the Prism, which is brutal, because at this point in time, if he stayed around till my next turn, I would swing with the Crusher, and he would be forced to sack 2. Which would end up probably being the Prism in one of his lands. And despite the fact that Cloud Posts are tapping for 6 each, you see he gets rid of the Glimmer Post. He's sitting not too good unless he gets an answer, because he's only got this blue mana available to him, and if that Crusher attacks twice, he's looking at pretty much all his land being gone. So that's the first game. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of point out the ramp on the Cloud Post, and you really want to be able to capitalize on the mistakes your opponent makes. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this game here. Pretty good starting hand. You do have a couple kill spells with the mana to play them outside of the Grotto. I'm not always happy to see 4 lands in hand, but hey, more land is better than no land. So my opponent's playing a turn 1 Delver, and that's a great start for any deck running Delver. When you see this start, you're going to assume that he's going to be playing the mono blue control. Actually, I can tell you now that he is not. He is playing an Izzet version of Delver, something you see more in standard Pauper than in Classic, or whatever the restriction is for Pauper. But anyways, it does come up every now and then with the larger card pool that you have available to you. So I'm not too concerned about it. I do have a Doomblade, I do have Echoing Decay, I can make a kill on it on the following turn, but it does manage to reveal and flip the Delver and reveal the Mana Leak, as we can see here. And as always, we'll leave that up so that we can see it for later. Now, having the Mana Leak, I'm not terribly concerned because I do have 2 kill spells in hand, so I can let him counter one of those and then kill it. But you just want to be aware when the mana's open that he will be able to counter. And I draw into Innocent Blood, yet another one, and I'm going to use that one to kill it. Now, whenever possible, you want to use the Innocent Blood, because that's something that, if you don't have a creature on the field, it's ideal. It just becomes a kill for your opponent, basically an Edict spell. So this is, even a better opportunity because he only has one creature. He's going to be forced to sacrifice the Delver if he does not choose to counterspell, which he does not. So that's a little beneficial, but we still know he has it in hand, and now we see why he decided to sack that. He does have a second Delver that he puts into play and has the mana available for the counterspell. That's okay. Again, still sitting on 2 kill spells. Attempt to Echoing Decay, I like to use that before Doomblade because I know the creature is within range of this -2/-2, whereas Doomblade you want to try and save for something that the Echoing Decay will not be able to hit. And you see there, I did fast forward and I apologize, but he did hit it with Mana Leak. So we're going to have to try to Doomblade it later on. So now he clicked that off, he reveals a Lightning Bolt. You can see if this was the first time you're encountering this game, that he is playing a blue-red version and not just the mono blue control. So we're going to attempt to play the Doomblade. We also have the option, we have Condescend as a backup. We can do for 1 with this mana available. Not ideal, but you do have the chance this early in the game that he does not have the mana to pay off such a small Condescend. Now, even if you get them paying off the X amount, you still get 2 scry, so you gotta just be aware of that. If you're in a really dire situation, you can still do that. So we're drawing the Crusher, nothing great. I still really could use some draw spells to get this going, but we do have some options. We're 1 mana away from the Capsize, and we have plenty of mana for Condescend. So now we get the Wall, which is great. If I need a kill spell, there are 3 options in the graveyard. I can choose from any of those. But right now, I'm just going to leave mana open for Condescend. You see he's leaving mana open as well. Pretty typical in 2 control decks to see this kind of thing. So Cloudpost coming down. You want to hopefully see more of those as the game progresses, but this is a bit of a slow start. Kind of an odd choice of cards here, Reach Through Mist. I will tell you, I did play this opponent in a different game. This is a single match that I recorded, but I did play him before, and he was running the Izzet colors with Kiln Fiend, so that's probably why he has all of these single blue draw spells, is to get an early Kiln Fiend and kind of, cast a lot of instants and sorceries to kind of get a real engine going with that Kiln Fiend. So we're going to sit here and we're going to wait while he draws a whole bunch of cards. He does, you see, also have Lonely Sandbar, so he's definitely digging for Kiln Fiend, which is probably his biggest hitter. So Glimmer Post, that's fantastic. Our Cloud Post is now going to be able to tap for more. You want to ramp up as much as possible so we can try this Crusher. Having this much mana open and available to him, you know that he's going to be able to counterspell it. But you still, at the worst case, I always say it's going to eat up a counterspell. So finally get some card draw and the Muldrifter. We're going to get that down on the field as soon as possible. Sometimes it's definitely a misplay to tap this black land because you want to be able to play anything that you draw off the Muldrifter. We do have the option to siphon through the Grotto here, but that's not ideal. Doing so kind of reduces our mana pool by 1. So you see we draw into a Cloud Post, which is fantastic. We got the Rolling Thunders that we need, so we don't need to teach it up. And we can use that for our kill spell later on. Now, the trick with this is really that you need, first off, the second red mana source, which is either going to be another Grotto or a Prophetic Prism, to siphon, the colorless mana into red. So you see my opponent's going to just keep drawing here. You see he reveals the reach through. We still know he has the lightning bolt in hands, but has no red mana to play it. But anyways, so you need one of those two items to siphon out the mana from the Rolling Thunder. And kind of the best way to get someone down, especially when you've done so little damage, is you really need multiple Cloud Posts. As many of these locuses on the field as possible, so you can really ramp up that mana and get the heavy damage through. Especially in mono blue, you're going to wait for him to tap out, so that's okay that we have time, but right now these Cloud Posts are tapping for 3 each only, so they're only going to tap for 6 mana, and then I have to siphon off 2 more into the Grotto and, X, whichever I draw into for the second one to do it, and I'm really not doing very much damage with that Rolling Thunder right about now. So he did finally draw into a Kiln Fiend. I will be able to use the wall at this point in time to get one of those kill spells back. He could have, killed with the lightning bolt here, but he decided it's better, and it's probably right to get the Kiln Fiend into play. He can take 2 damage. He's at 20 life. But I'm going to be able to use the wall right now to return a kill spell. Now you have the 3 choices: the Innocent Blood, the Echoing Decay, and the Doomblade. Innocent Blood, do not want to choose that unless you're going to want to sacrifice your wall. I prefer to keep it in this matchup in case I have to chump block another Kiln Fiend later on. You have the Echoing Decay and the Doomblade. Either one of those you can choose. The Echoing Decay will kill the Kiln Fiend because it's only a 2 toughness, and if he pumps it by casting a spell, it's only going to pump his attack power, not his toughness. So it really didn't matter which one of those I choose, because it's just going back into the graveyard. But we're going to keep going on. What I'm going to have to do now is hope for more Cloud Posts. Like I said, I still need another outlet for red mana. And just whittle him down with the Muldrifter to kind of lessen the need for additional Locust lands. So we draw a Doomblade, not great in this matchup. He is running a very creature light deck, which you will find in most Izzet and other control decks are very creature light. So kind of pre-sideboarding, you're not looking too great. But I will, at this point in time, cast the Crusher to try and eat up a counterspell, or if he doesn't have a counterspell, which would be silly, he's at 6 cards in hand, all this open mana. But if, for whatever reason, he was unable to counterspell this, I would get the Crusher into play, and that puts me at a pretty good advantage. So he plays the Mana Leak. I have the option to pay 3, or I could use the Condescend to get the Scry off. I decided to pay 3, giving myself the option to counterspell a second counterspell. But you see it is another Mana Leak, and he does have enough mana open later on to pay off the 1 I would be able to do with Condescend. What I really needed there is for him to do something stupid like casting the Lightning Bolt before the Mana Leak finished on the stack, so that it would really it would affect him, and I would be able to possibly Condescend off that. But he's not so stupid, so we will have to let the Crusher die to the counterspell. It is unfortunate. It's a little easier to pay off if you have Cloud Posts available, but I did tap out to get that creature off the field, so it is what it is. And here comes 2 lightning bolts. He's going to really try and whittle me down with those, as most blue-red decks will. So more drawing. I'm assuming at this point he's still searching out another Kiln Fiend. It's definitely an interesting deck that he's got, because he's got so many his creature base seems to pretty much be the Delvers and the Kiln Fiend, so he really is kind of filled the rest of his deck with burn spells and draws, as well as a couple counters. So now I'm still searching. I finally found my additional red source, but I'm going to want to draw as many cards as possible so that I can try and get additional mana out of this. What I'm going to be stuck at, you see, is still only 2 Cloud Posts. It's not beneficial at all, because I cannot do enough damage to finish him off. You have to siphon 2 lands off to the Shimmering Grotto and to the Prism, so you might as well discount the Swamp and the Glimmer Post. So I'm right there. I'm looking at, I need 16. After this attack it'll be 14. Like I said, you're going to whittle down with the Drifter, but you do a little math. You see I've got 6 here, and then I've got 4 more here. That's only going to do 10. So I really can't get off that finishing blow just quite yet. He is going to try and continue to burn me down with these spells, and all I can do is hope that he does not have enough. I do have the Condescend in hand to kind of slow him down on this turn if he decides to do something. Still sitting on no land, so still only going to be able to do 10, but I am able to get him down to 12 at this point with the Muldrifter's attack. You see all these useless kill spells, like I said. Post sideboard, you're sitting a little better. You can clear these out of your deck. still keep one or two for this matchup, or this kind of matchup at least, but you don't need as many as there are here. So now I'm going to use the Mystical Teachings, just trying to thin out spells from my deck. I am going to get a counter spell, so that if I do have the mana, I can cast Rolling Thunder. He still has 3 cards in hand. He's got all this mana open. My guess is that he has a counter spell available to him. So I wanted to get a counter spell here because Condescend is only going to keep it. If I kept everything but 2 mana open for Condescend, it's going to get me to a point where he's going to be able to easily pay that 2 and the spell's going to get countered. So I wanted to get a hard counter that I could get rid of for 2, and it will require him to have 2 counter spells to finish it off. So I draw into Probe here. I'm going to use it, trying to, like I said, find out more land, because after this attack I will just barely have 10, and I'm going on the assumption that he does have a counter spell. You see he discarded here. It was the Martyr of Ashes, it was the Mana Leak, so now I know I am available to use this on my following turn and finish him off with the Rolling Thunder finally. It's a really good finisher for this deck. And now he has to concede. He drops a land that she drew, he's got 1 card in hand. I can cast the Rolling Thunder at this point in time. I would have had enough to kill him without the counterspell backup. But really, this is, I was sitting here the whole time, honestly, trying to hope that he did not concede before I got Rolling Thunder, because I've played a lot of games trying to get one to show using Rolling Thunder as a win condition. And he conceded, but at this point in time, I think this is still a very good example. You can see perfectly that I would have been able to use Rolling Thunder on my following turn and have Counterspell as a backup available to me. So you can see why this is really the win condition in the blue-red, the Izzet Control decks. And now you can see the benefit of being able to work it into the Dimir Biggs deck, or the UB Biggs as I like to call it.